Hello and welcome to another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. I'm your host, Chad Marschik. My program today is called Upper Body Exercises for Pitchers, and I'm here with my very special guest, Eric Jokisch.
How you doing, Chad?
I'm good, Eric. Eric and I have been working together for the last 4 off seasons. Some of you may know that Eric is a pitcher in the Chicago Cubs organization. He was fortunate enough to get called up last year and made his debut actually in Milwaukee. Threw about close to 15 innings last year, so had good success. And today we thought we'd share some exercises in terms of what I do with him in the off season with his programming. Today we're going to focus a lot on upper body, although we do obviously head to tail in terms of exercises. I thought that most people, especially a lot of young kids out there that are participating in some type of an exercise program, tend to do a lot of the wrong things that are going to maybe create problems with their shoulder joint and decrease velocity. I've worked with a lot of pitchers over the last 22 plus years, and I've discovered that oftentimes kids come to me with problems to begin with. Maybe they're doing too many exercises like a football player would. They're doing a lot of bench pressing, they're doing a lot of overhead pressing. They're going to create problems with tight pecs and really super strong lats, which is going to create some dysfunction rather in the shoulder joint. So we don't do any of those exercises. We don't do any type of overhead pressing for any of our throwing athletes. We don't do any type of bench pressing with our overhead athletes. And I think it's important for people to see that maybe they have a young athlete at home, or if you're a young athlete that is watching this or participates in some type of an overhead sport, to understand things that you can do. They're going to help promote better stability in the shoulder joint and help you be more explosive with any type of overhead activity. So we're going to start, Eric, with some of the exercises that we use to warm up. And we're going to take a medicine ball. Typically we do a rather extensive warm-up series of exercises, but I'm going to share with you a few of the basics ones that we do. We're going to start off with the med ball walks. So with this, what we're trying to do is create better mobility through his thoracic spine, through his mid-back, and he's just going to swing the ball from side to side, and then he's swinging it across the leg he's leading with. Again, this is a good exercise to mobilize the thoracic spine. Now figure eights. Now we're just going to change this a little bit, and he's going to make a figure eight movement with the medicine ball. And we're just trying to get the scapula to move in all different planes, getting his thoracic spine ready to roll. This is going to hit his core a little bit as well. And now he's going to go low, putting it in his hip pocket, so low rotation. He's getting his trunk rotators working as well. And usually we do this for, say, a set number of reps, roughly 10 reps for each of the 3 movements. And then we're going to go right into a medicine ball reverse wood chop. So he's going to place one foot forward, take the medicine ball in front of him, and he's going to reach back over his head. The important thing to remember with this exercise, with any type of reverse wood chop action, is that you want to get good length through the abdominal muscles. So what we're trying to do, say 10 reps each side, we're trying to bring the ball back over your head to lengthen the abdominals from the kind of the ground up. So a lot of people, a lot of young athletes get caught up with doing a lot of crunches, and even older people do too many exercises where they're trying to bring their shoulder blades down towards their rib cage, and they tend to create really stiff, rigid abdominal muscles. And for pitchers, you have to be long through your trunk to be able to, when you go through your windup and you lengthen through your core before you release the ball, you've got to have good length here so you can extend your spine so you get better velocity as you release the ball. All right, that's it with the medicine ball. Again, a lot of really good medicine ball drills. We'll share a couple of core drills using the medicine ball here shortly. Okay, next we're going to foam roll his lats and thoracic spine. So just lie on your side. Let's get your lats on each side. Lats are a big culprit in terms of being too tight with a lot of people because of all the rows and a lot of the excessive pulling movements, pull-up movements that a lot of people tend to do. Because of gravity, the lats are prone to becoming really tight here. So the lat muscles insert, actually, they attach actually, one of the areas they attach is to your humerus, your upper arm bone here. And if they're too tight, it creates some dysfunction in terms of throwing mechanics in the shoulder joint. So the humerus, this big bone here, sits in this cavity called your glenoid, the glenoid fossa. Think about, the best way to think about it is if you had if you've ever played golf, you know how the ball sits on the tee. And it has to sit perfectly on the tee, otherwise it's going to fall off. Well, the same holds true for the shoulder joint. The humerus here needs to fit perfectly in an ideal world right in that cavity. So it sits perfectly so that when it moves, and it's the most mobile joint in your body, it's got to move, efficiently so you don't create problems in the shoulder joint. So the exercise that he just demonstrated, using the foam roller to lengthen these muscles, to stretch out these muscles in the lats, it's a way to kind of release them. It's almost like self-massage. One more exercise on the roller. Let's do the thoracic spine, where you just place your shoulder blades on the roller, and you're going to roll back and forth. So the good thing about the foam roller here is it's a good tool for self-myofascial release. Looks like you just lost your mic. You can probably throw it in your pocket if you need to. You're going to place the roller just beneath your shoulder blades, hands behind your head, and you're just going to roll, take a couple of trips back and forth from your shoulder blades down to like your mid-rib cage. And you're just trying to focus on getting any little pops or self-mobilizing your thoracic spine. It's a great exercise just to get good mobility through the mid-back. So those are 2 upper body foam roller drills that you can do. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is a couple more warm-up things. If you have a tennis ball, or we use a lacrosse ball for this, is to release your pec minor. So go ahead and against the wall. And for this, you're just trying to find your pec minor, and it inserts here in your coracoid process, which is part of your scapula here. And what you're trying to do is release it. And oftentimes with any type of a pressing movement or just with gravity in general, the pec minor muscle oftentimes becomes tight. And what happens is that when it becomes too tight, it tends to tip your scapula. And because it tips the scapula forward, your shoulder wants to come too far forward. And if it comes too far forward, it's not going to sit perfectly in that capsule, your shoulder capsule here. And we want that for throwing athletes. So by releasing this, stretching this in a sense, it's going to help keep that pec minor at the right length. You've heard of the pec major. Anytime you're doing any type of a bench press movement, it's going to affect these muscles here in the chest. And by releasing it here, it's going to allow, again, your humerus to sit better in the joint itself. So you take a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, find any little sore spots right up in this region, just press against the wall. And when you encounter a sore spot, just stay right on it until it kind of subsides. It's going to release and then move on to the next spot. So maybe about a minute each side roughly. Great tool though. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is a wall stretch against the wall. So backside against the wall. This is our last warm-up drill. So Eric's going to place his arms against the wall and take his arms and slide them up and down here about 10 to 15 times. So he's going to flatten his lower back, contract his abdominals. And the other big thing you want to make sure of is that you don't let your ribs flare out. You want to kind of pull your rib cage in and down. Keep your core tight, heels flat against the ground, and flatten your back. And what this is promoting for Eric is better scapulohumeral rhythm. So his scapula, as it moves up, when he raises his arms above his head, it just trains those muscles to do their job efficiently. That's probably about 15. Good. How's that feel, all right? Good. Good. Okay, next we're going to talk about some exercises for, overall strength. And we're going to start with some of the core exercises that we typically do, because I like to lead with the core depending on what we're doing. If I'm doing a lower body workout, I like to do the core towards the end. If I'm doing an upper body workout, I like to do the core towards the beginning. So I like to use Swiss balls. I like to use exercise tubings. You won't find us doing really any abdominal crunches. We do a lot of stability type exercises that are going to promote good stability through his core, because with throwing athletes, especially for pitchers, the energy is really expressed from the core outward through your extremities. You generate a lot of force from the ground up on the mound, and then through the abdominal muscles, the energy has to be stored and released too, especially when you release the ball. So Eric's going to get in a plank position on the ball. We're going to do a pot stir here. So his forearms are on the ball. So why don't you do 10 each direction, clockwise and counterclockwise. So Eric's going to get in a good plank position, and he's going to stir the pot. And basically, what he's doing here is his abdominal muscles really have to stabilize his torso here as he moves his upper body. So it's a good, strong, challenging contraction here in the core. It's the isometric contraction primarily, but you need good, again, good trunk stability, and that's one of the better exercises for it. So that's called the Swiss ball pot stir. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and do some stability exercise with exercise tubing. And I've got a boatload of exercises that we do for core, but I just want to share a few to give you an idea of other things you can do besides a crunch on a Swiss ball or off the floor. So why don't you hold on to the exercise tubing, reach out with your arms. All right, so this is a stability exercise, just reach out, where if you have a partner, the partner is going to pull on one end. Eric is obviously the one doing most of the work here. His job is to keep his hands centered at his sternum, his hips square, his feet pointed straight ahead. And I'm just pulling this tubing in different positions. And I usually do this for a set amount of time, about 30 seconds each side. So go ahead and turn around now, Eric. So we're going to change this, just face that direction. That's good. I want people to see what you look like from the backside. All right, left foot forward, right foot behind you. Now I'm going to mess with his stability even further. So I'm going to offset his feet and continue with this. So he's got to work a little bit harder when his feet are offset or staggered. And he wants to reach out too at the same time so that his scapula kind of is snug against his rib cage. And you can see, I've got to pull him off balance. It's harder than what it looks. And again, about 30 seconds roughly each side. All right, cool, great. Okay, more ballistic, plyometric type exercise for the core especially, a little bit more pitcher specific. We call them med ball pitcher slams. So Eric's going to take the medicine ball and he's going to slam the ball. So why don't you do, say, 4 reps each side where you're going to go, you're going to wind up. So he's going through his wind up and he's going to slam the ball. Let's use a different ball. Otherwise, we're going to put that one through the roof. Try that one. So if you think about how you would release the ball, the trajectory of the ball is going towards home plate. He's kind of going to the side here. So if you're driving off the mound, all your momentum is going towards home plate. And so that's why we're doing it not straight down, but kind of a rotation. So you want to take a ball that's not too heavy, because if it's too heavy, you're not going to generate enough speed. And it's very explosive, as hard as you possibly can when you release the ball. Okay, that's good. So I might have an athlete do maybe 3 or 4 sets of 3 to 4 reps, roughly max. We're not doing a maximal number of reps. It's not, see how many reps you can do. It's about maximal effort when you do that exercise. And once you do more than, say, roughly 4 reps on each side, then the speed starts to go down. And we want to take advantage of that plyometric type effort for the core, so we want to keep the speed high. Think about a pitcher especially. When they release the ball, it's roughly every 15 seconds if you think about it. By the time the ball leaves their fingertips, gets to home plate, or at least in the major leagues and minor leagues, and the pitcher gets it back. So you've got a rest interval in there too. So you don't want to do marathon type explosive exercises because it's going to actually probably make you slower rather than faster. We want to maximize that speed. The other big thing to remember about the core really helps not only to accelerate when you're releasing the ball, but to decelerate a lot of that movement so you can slow things down. We always think about how fast we can move something. If you think about the shoulder joint, the shoulder actually takes a real beating when you throw a baseball. It moves at 7,000 degrees per second. It's one of the most explosive, violent movements in all of sport. So we've got to protect the shoulder by making sure that we address the body from the ground up. A lot of people think, well, the rotator cuff does all these wonderful things to slow down that internal rotation. It doesn't. A lot of it comes from the core muscles and the hip muscles and the hamstrings, and it's a whole body deceleration. All right, so we hit the core. So let's go ahead and give some people an idea about some of the stability type exercises we do for the upper body. I said at the beginning of the program, we don't do any bench pressing. We don't do any type of overhead pressing. And the reason being is that when you're doing a lot of bench pressing, oftentimes the scapula doesn't adduct enough or move inward. And it kind of becomes fixed on a bench. Well, that's going to really cause the shoulder joint to work overtime and take a pounding. We want to preserve the integrity of the shoulder joint. We don't want it to take a pounding, so we're careful with that. So instead of doing a bench press type exercise, we want to strengthen these stabilizing muscles in the shoulder, the chest, and the core. We'll do an exercise like the Swiss ball stability push-up. So he's going to get in a push-up position, and he's just going to isometrically hold that. I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to mess with this. This doesn't look so hard, but it is hard, all right? So his shoulder stabilizers, his rotator cuff muscles, his scap stabilizers have to work really hard to help him maintain this stability as well as his core. So he's integrating all these muscles at the same time. I'm more concerned about stability of the shoulder joint than anything else. And so we'll do this for maybe 20 to 40 seconds max. That's good, Eric. Good. So it's a good stability type exercise. Doesn't really cause any shortness here in the pecs. All right, another one on the ground. Let's go ahead and do the spider walk next. So let's just move from here to here. Now this is one of the tests I actually used for Eric when I first tested him. And he was not very good at it. He couldn't even do it. It was kind of funny, actually. He's going to kick me after the show's over.
Still not very good at it.
Still not very good at it. And so you're just moving, keeping your hands beneath your shoulders. Okay, that's good. Keeping your hands beneath your shoulders and moving back and forth for, say, a set distance or a set amount of time. And what this is doing, it's really working on the shoulder stabilizers, especially the serratus anterior that attaches to your scapula. Helps to kind of hold that puppy against the rib cage. So again, a good exercise to do that isn't going to shorten these pec muscles too much. It's going to create more stability in the shoulder joint. Really important. So those are two like front side of your body exercises. Now we're going to talk about some pulling type movements, especially for the lats, which the lats help to decelerate. They help to extend the shoulder and decelerate a lot of that flexion when you release the ball. So lat strength is important, but adequate lat strength. You don't want your lats so big and strong and like a bodybuilder or a lot of football players where you inhibit or impede your mobility in the shoulder joint. So Eric's going to demonstrate how to do a pull-up. We do not use any type of an underhand grip. Typically we like to use a parallel grip. Just crank out, say, 3 reps. So what he's doing here, he's using a parallel grip and he's pulling himself all the way up and he's allowing himself to go all the way down. This serves as a type of a traction type exercise too, which is going to keep the joint space here in your shoulder joint where it needs to be, or even hopefully increase it slightly. What happens when you're doing a lot of overhead type pressing is that you can actually decrease your joint space, and you want to have adequate joint space when you're throwing a baseball and not decrease it. So that's very important. So a parallel grip is also going to not affect the long head of the bicep tendon. If you can't do a pull-up and you just want to try to say you can also jump and pull yourself up, that's fine. A lot of people can't do this. You can start with a structure, say that you stand on, chin yourself there, and then allow yourself to go down. That's like a negative pull-up, which is fine. So if you're not strong enough to do a pull-up, you can certainly just isometrically hold yourself there and then lower yourself slowly, say in a 3 to 5 count, okay? And the other thing that we don't do tons and tons of pull-ups, meaning I'm not trying to do, 8 sets of 15 to 20 pull-ups. That's not the goal, because I don't want excessive strength or excessive size in his lats. I want adequate strength to make the lats do what they're supposed to do. Another exercise that I really like is a dumbbell split stance row. And the reason I like this exercise, not only is it going to strengthen the back side of his body, his lats, his mid-back, but it's also going to help promote better stability through the hip. So usually say 8 reps each side. So you're going to get in a split stance position, drive through the ground where the forward heel is in the ground. And this is going to help, again, lengthen the hamstring. He's got a nice spine angle where his back is nice and flat. He's not rounded over. But if you think about a release point of a pitcher, when he follows through, he's got to go ahead and rack it, Eric.
Okay.
The pitcher has to come through and flex his spine down. And oftentimes, if they're not long enough through the upper hamstrings, you're typically going to leave the ball up in the zone. And you definitely don't want that as a pitcher. So normal, optimal hamstring length is very important. For example, you should be able to bend over to 90 degrees where your back is flat, not necessarily touch the ground, but this is all the farther you have to get down. It's also going to help you decelerate that long moment arm as you release the ball so you protect, again, your shoulder joint. Okay? Couple other exercises for the shoulders. So let's go ahead and do the pitcher pulls. This is an exercise that I came up with that I really like. I'm trying to simulate the action that's the opposite of what you normally do as a pitcher. So Eric's a left-handed pitcher. And I'm going to take exercise tubing. I've got this special tubing with a ball on one end. And he's going to put his foot, say, on an elevated surface and do, say, 8 to 10 reps. And he's going to try to get his stride about where he normally is on the mound when he releases the ball. So our focus is going backwards, all right? So he's got resistance at the top going backwards. Instead of driving, focusing on as we release the pitch, everything's kind of the opposite. And I make him work a little bit, and now he's an ambidextrous pitcher. Kidding. So you can kind of get an idea of the movement that he's going through. This is an exercise that's also going to lengthen the abdominal muscles. It's going to promote better extension through his thoracic spine, through his mid-back. And it's going to work all those posterior muscles in the shoulder joint as well. So again, I think a lot about, I don't do a lot of isolation type exercises for the rotator cuff. Very minimal. You see a lot of people doing, this stuff, which is fine, and this stuff. Internal and external rotations, 0 degrees of abduction. This is 90 degrees. This is fine to a point, but I don't rely on that exclusively. I don't do a lot of deltoid work. I don't do a lot of lateral raises, front raises, rear raises. That's more for the deltoid muscles, not really the shoulder stabilizers. Those are the show muscles. If I'm a bodybuilder, if I'm a football player, I may do some of that, probably a lot of that, but not as a baseball pitcher. That's not what we're shooting for there. So make sure I have all everything covered here that I wanted to cover today. Oh yeah, some of the kneeling stability exercise. Go ahead and get in a kneeling position. I guess we have to use this, don't we? Your precious knees. So go ahead and get in a kneeling position. So this is another partner drill. Eric's going to set up in a kneeling position with 1 foot forward. You want to make sure that the elbow is slightly in front of the joint here. So this is called the scapular plane. And what he's going to do, he's going to fire his core really hard. All right, so I can't really push him. And I'm going to pull and slap his hand, his forearm a little bit. Right? You can see how he's struggling a little bit to maintain stability. Again, I want those shoulder stabilizers to work, and I want his core stabilizers to work at the same time. So I'm coming in and out. And again, your job is not to knock your partner down, the person you're trying to help. You're trying to challenge them. And we usually go about 20 to 30 seconds there. So that's an idea. We don't have to do the other side. We're running out of time. So go ahead and do, I want you to lie on your belly. Do palm to sky. This is another really good one. We've got a couple of stretches we're going to show, and this is called palm to sky. This is actually a good test. Just do 10 reps each side. So palm to sky, going to work these rotator cuff muscles a little bit. It's also going to show you how tight you might be in your shoulder joint. All right, you can notice here with his left arm, he gets good elevation. On his right arm, he does. 2, he's left-hand dominant in terms of throwing a baseball. The range of motion for this exercise is nearly identical. Most pitchers, it's not. Most times, most pitchers have a significant differential. Okay, we got sleeper hold next. Significant differential with how far they can lift their throwing arm up off their tailbone versus the non-throwing arm. Usually the non-throwing arm, they have significantly more range of motion. You want to have nearly identical range of motion. If you do the right exercises and the right flexibility exercise, you're not going to have a problem in terms of range. This is called a sleeper stretch, and it's going to stretch this posterior shoulder capsule. So a lot of pitchers have really good external rotation going this way, okay? But they don't have a lot of good internal rotation going this way. So we're trying to stretch those internal rotators of the cuff itself. So what you're going to do is you're going to lie on the both sides actually, so do both sides. You want to make sure that the back of the shoulder blade makes good contact with the ground and does not leave the surface of the floor so that the scapula bites into the floor. It makes a good connection. And then you're going to apply roughly about 8 pounds of pressure to your forearm. Don't kill it. It's not how hard you can press your arm. It's only about 5 to 8 pounds of pressure. You're trying to stretch the capsule gently. And you'll do maybe 5 to 8 reps here. Hold each one for roughly a 5 to 8 count. Again, great way. I see so many young kids do this improperly. They don't get their shoulder blade, they don't snug it up to the floor. And that's imperative. That's very important. That's our, man, we don't even have to work out today.
Right?
All right, I'll see you later. Bye.
Good deal.
All right, so if you have any questions about what we do here at Body Symmetry, definitely give us a call. Eric, I'm proud of your accomplishments, and I appreciate your help today,
Thanks
buddy.
a lot, Chad. Appreciate everything.
Thank you. Until next time, I'm your host, Chad Marschik. Hey, Quinn and Riley.